Hi guys, and welcome back for another video. I hope you guys are doing great and are having a great start to your week, since you'll probably be seeing this on Monday. But yes, today's video is actually a first part of just a really simple series I'm going to be doing throughout the week. So today, Monday, and then another one on Wednesday, and then Friday, of just my 3 favorite curriculums when it comes to, I guess, programs you can call them, but for teaching little ones to read. They're very simple, they're very basic, but they're all 3 drastically different, and they all serve different purposes based on kind of what your kid's learning styles are and what they're ready for and what kind of like age they are and everything like that. So I wanted to share all 3 of them with you. However, I didn't want to put them all in the same video. For one, it would be over an hour long probably, but I also didn't want it to be overwhelming because I'm going to be sharing both the pros and cons of all 3 of these courses, and I didn't want that to be overwhelming. So anyways, today's video, if you can tell from the title down below, I'm going to be sharing some of the pros and cons our family has kind of learned along the way while using the Teach a Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. So this is going to be what we're talking about today. Wednesday, I'm going to be sharing with you how and why we use and some of the pros and cons of the Victory Drill Book method. It's an amazing course as well. All 3 of them really are, but like I said, they serve different purposes. And then on Friday's video, I'm going to be sharing in depth how we also have used in the past and are using the Alpha Phonics curriculum. All 3 are great options if you're looking for a good thing to teach your kiddos how to read. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into today's video. We're going to go ahead and start with the pros of Teach a Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. So I am going to go ahead and flip the camera around just so you can get an idea of the first opening part of the book. But the first part of the book, you of course are going to have your introduction. Then you're going to go straight into the parent's guide. I do love the extensive parent's guide that they do have on this curriculum. But on page 9 in the parent's guide, the one part I did highlight, it is the program that prepares the child should be a careful one. Just as good instruction in playing the piano starts with simple skills that are modified and expanded to create more complicated ones. So I like how they set the tone for that. So they're saying it is going to start very simple and very basic and do the building blocks on top of that. Then on page 10, you're going to go into communicating clearly with the child. You're going to go into page 11, which is going to talk about making the teaching easier for you as the parent. And then the most important part, in the teacher part anyway, the beginning of the book, is on page 13, and it's going to kind of show you the to start alphabet. And it is right here. You can tell the part that is highlighted right here, and it kind of goes into detail onto why they do it this way. So you will notice that there are 2 different variations for the letter A as well as for the letter E, and it's really important that you as a parent, before you sit down with your kiddos, can kind of already know all the sounds, how they work and how they're blended together, so you're not trying to figure out together like how you're doing, like why it's like looking really funky and everything like that. But hopefully you will be able to sit down and kind of go over those letter blends for yourself and why they look a little bit differently. But they're written a little bit differently, so the child can then recognize that it is either that long A or short A sound and everything like that. But just to, as a teacher, have a heads up on how that's going to be so you can then share that with your child. And you're going to go into teaching first things first. The next page, you're going to be starting to get ready. As part of the getting ready, which is going to be before you start teaching your child, it says that you should do 4 different things. The first thing that you should do, of course, is to learn the sounds that are introduced in the program, particularly the first 10. So if you as the teacher can sit down, go over the first 10 little letter blends that you're going to be doing, that way when you actually sit down with your child, it's going to be a much easier transition. The second thing it says is make up a teaching schedule, and I would agree with this one because I know with my kiddos, they learn the best when we are being consistent. So this book probably won't work if you just do it 1 or 2 times a week. It is more of like an everyday, at least 3 to 5 days a week of consistency to actually see the program take its course and actually work. And then it says practice some corrections. So as a teacher, it's good to also recognize that like when the kiddos do make a mistake, that we're recognizing it right away and that we're correcting it right away, so that one little simple mistake doesn't turn into a habit, which is sometimes hard to do when they're in the process of either reading a word or doing a sight word and things like that. And then it said, as a teacher, to before you start that first lesson, it says to practice presenting the first couple of lessons in the program. So this is where I'm going to jump into the prose of the book. And when my first grader was a preschooler, that's when I first got this book, so a couple years ago. I loved the fact that every single lesson is transcripted for you. It has everything written out for you as a teacher to say. So the biggest pro is for the first time homeschooler, if you're just now starting your little ones out and you might need a little help or a little reassurance on how to teach it. This is a fantastic book for that, because as I said, literally everything you need to say to your child, from repeat after me, and as you can tell here, I'll kind of turn the camera around again and show you. On lesson 1, everything in red, first of all, is what you as a teacher will say. And the simplicity of that, especially for starting out homeschooling, is wonderful. And everything in red. So going through the task number 1, which is sounds introduction, you're going to read exactly verbatim what the red is. Of course, you don't have to do exactly what it is, but it's just easier for first time homeschoolers. But yeah, it says, I'm going to touch under this sound and say this sound. So you're going to touch the first ball of the arrow, move quickly to the second ball, hold for 2 seconds, and then you'll say to your student, okay, now it's your turn to say the sound when I touch under it, so get ready, and then you say the sound together. So you're going to touch under that, and then you're going to say, okay, it's their turn to do it, so then they're going to do it. The one thing that I love about this is the say it fast game, because they're learning how to listen to those syllables separately and then put it together. And they're really comprehending, at least my little kids did a really good job comprehending the fact that when you say ice cream and then ice cream, like actually having them like actually hear how those sounds go together to make up a single word, and then translate into these 2 letters will make this word, these 3 sounds together will make this word, depending on whether or not you say it slow or fast. So I really like how they incorporate that, and they start that the very first lesson. You're going to be introducing them to that concept of the blending together quickly to make that full word or full sound, etc. So I love that. And then the third task is you're going to say the sounds. So you're going to blend the 2 sounds together, starting with am, me, in, and she, in, on, etc. So you're going to start by saying it slow and then saying it fast. For your task 4, you're just going to be going over the sounds review. Task 5 is you're going to say it fast again, and then task 6 is your sounds writing. So if your little ones do not know how to write their letters by the time they start this, they have on page 24 and 25 in the beginning of the book, they have the sounds writing chart. I love that they include this. Now, all of my kiddos typically have already known at this point in their either preschool or kindergarten years, when they're ready to read, they've already known how to kind of like write those letters. So we have not actually used that, but however, I do love that they include that. So if you're wanting to teach that beginning reading and writing at the same time, it's a great way to do that. I have not actually used the sound writing chart though, because as I said, we did start it at a different time in our education. Anyway, so that is the entire first lesson. So another few pros that we really did enjoy by using this book, and the first one is that it is great if your student is a hands-on or visual learner, because as I mentioned before, when they are actually taking their little finger and having to actually physically move their finger, connecting the dots in their head with their finger in their mind and their eyes, that they have to actually make the sound move their finger, it's actually great for those more visual hands-on learners, because they're actually feeling the sounds as well as visually seeing the letter blends, blend, and that's obviously like what they sound like and everything. So that was a huge pro for me. One of my kiddos is definitely more of a hands-on visual learner than the other, and so this has actually worked really, really well, where maybe for my other one it was a little bit too he was just a little bit bored with it anyway. But my hands-on visual learner, this is a great option for them, because they were again able to feel the sound, feel it, I should say. But then they loved that visual representation of actually sliding the sounds across by using the arrow. So that was a huge pro. And one of the things that even after we did this for like the first 10-15 lessons, when we went on to add in like the Bob's books, which I'm going to share with you how we use those here in a minute, when we added those in, they were kind of like in their minds that they were struggling with the word, they would still take their finger and pretend like there was an arrow. And so that was kind of fun and neat to see that they actually use the arrows outside of the book too when it came to like learning how to blend the sounds to create words and everything like that. Another pro I wanted to share is that the lessons are relatively short, they're extremely simple, and they're very gentle. And again, I say that as a pro. It could be a con depending on your child's learning styles, but for the child I'm referring to, it was a pro because they actually needed some more repetition, and they actually thrived off of doing the same thing even if it meant a few days in a row. But probably lessons 1 through 10, you're only learning a very few different letters on top of your M, your S, your T, your A, and things like that. So if your child is in the early years but has an interest in reading, that's a great option too, because it's a very soft, gentle approach, and the lessons are really no more, for me anyway, they normally are no more than like that 15-20 minute max type thing, which is the most that little ones typically want to do a reading lesson anyway. So that's a pro, is that if your kiddos are maybe interested in doing reading or they want to learn about reading and everything like that, it's such a soft, gentle approach to that, and it's just very gentle, and I like that aspect of it too. So the last pro that I wanted to mention, and I mentioned this because it's going to kind of tie into my first con, but I'm going to go ahead and share the pro part of it first. And that is that the order that you actually learn your letter sounds in, which is your M and your S, and then you're going to go until learning A and everything like that. The order that you actually learn your sounds is actually the exact same order that the beginning Bob book sounds are introduced. So I'm going to insert a picture here of the Bob set that I actually do use and have used in the past with this curriculum. So if you're wanting some different stories or some actual reading, actual hands-on reading practice, I would definitely add those Bob books in with this, because it's a great addition instead of just doing this, if that makes sense. Speaking of the Bob books, jump into my first con, and that is the actual stories in these books, in this curriculum I should say, are very strange. The stories are just very strange. I'm going to give you a couple of examples so I can show you what I mean by that. On page 113, first of all, if you can see the little boxes in between the words, that is just to let the student know that the sounds are not blended together. It's a separation. It's just odd. It is. So the whole story is a man sat on a ram that ram cannot see. And then the picture down here is a man sitting on the ram. Obviously the ram cannot see. So it's just, I don't know. I find that the stories in here are very odd to some extent. Another example would be on page 222 when it's a girl and a man. A girl was on a road to a farm. She met a man. She said, "Go with me to the farm, then we will pet a pig." The man said, "I pet ducks and I pet chicks, but I do not pet pigs." So the girl said, "It is fun to pet pigs. Pigs are fat." The man said, "I will not pet them. I will go to the park and pet a duck." So the man went to the park to pet a duck, and the girl went to the farm to pet a pig. And so all the stories are just kind of odd to me. And again, this is just a totally personal opinion and preference. They're just kind of odd. So that's a con to me, because, and the reason why I mentioned this as my first con is kind of goes back into the why we started incorporating the Bob books. And once you get to be this fluent in reading, by the time you're at lesson, like, I think it's 56, 57, or in the lesson 60 and stuff like that, you are at this point in your lessons ready to branch off to really whatever reader you want at this point. I need beginning readers, so we love the Good and the Beautiful readers. Boxes A, B, and C is great to add into this too. As I mentioned before, when you're first starting out in the first like 25 lessons, the Bob books align with it perfectly as far as those letter blends. That's a great option, but some of the pictures are odd too. Again, the stories are kind of odd. Probably one of my only cons about it. And then I will also say too that my only simple con, and again, this just goes as a personal preference, and I think all pros and cons are personal preferences depending on the family, so disclaimer there. But my only other con with this entire book really is the fact that I don't really love the way that they teach sight words. I'm a huge fan of teaching sight words as an irregular part of the English. In the English language is one of the hardest languages to learn, especially when you start throwing in the sight words. And I do really enjoy the fact that The Good and the Beautiful, like they have their sight word ladders, they have their sight word sounds, and they notice them as irregular, and you are learning them very differently than you do any other phonetical alphabet or any type of other blends or phonics or anything like that, because they're irregular and they're different, and they kind of do have to be learned by sight and by seeing them in literature and practicing them. But what they do in this book is they try to make sight words a part of the regular English language. I think it's a great visual representation on sight words, and knowing that like the SH obviously goes together, the QUs obviously always go together. However, the only bad part about learning sight words that way and kind of making the kids think that it's a regular thing instead of irregular is that I found that once we got halfway through the book and we translated this and we tried to go into like those beginning readers and everything, they actually really struggled with the sight words, because they all, when you're reading a book and you're reading a beginning reader, wherever you're reading, all the letters, no matter what font it is, will look the same. But the way they do it in here is they make those special blends or those special sounds and the silent E either a different size, a different font. And it's difficult to translate then when you are going into another book. So that was a big con. I guess it is a bigger con now that I think about it, because they did really struggle taking this and then going into actually reading, because they were looking, so when mommy said, hey, that's a silent E, and it's a silent E, you know, this is what the vowel sound says, everything like that, but they weren't used to seeing the little E, because for example, let me see if I can show you what I can explain here. But on the word same here, if you can see it right here, all the silent E's in this book are small. But when you are reading a regular book or a reader, they don't do that. All the letters are the same. So they didn't realize that the silent E, they were actually blending the E out with the letters, because in the book, that's what it shows you to do. It wasn't small. And so things like that, I wasn't a huge fan of. I'd much rather have them get an education and learning when it comes to reading based on what they will actually read in a book. So that they actually found some of that confusing. Same with like the SHE. Now I do like the concept of the sight word here, the she. And you can tell the S is written differently because that shows that the S and the H go together, and I do like that. However, when it came to translating that into a reader or another book, they never got that. Whereas if we had just learned the sight word she, then they would have just known the sight word she from the beginning. But anyway, those are really my only couple cons, I guess 2 to 3 cons I can say for this book. Ideally, this would be great for that visual hands-on learner, as I mentioned before. Again, we did incorporate other things as far as like the Bob books and the Good and the Beautiful readers and everything like that to try to get some more substance to the stories and everything like that. But overall, it is a great option. And the reason why I wanted to share this book with you first before I share with you anyway the Alphaphonics and the Victory Drill book, which we'll be talking about on Wednesday and Friday of this week, is because this is a fantastic first part before you go into those programs. Because if the kiddos, as I said before, are more visual and hands-on, and they want to get the concept of actually having to use the arrows and everything, that will actually help them a lot. And the other 2 courses I'm going to share with you, even though they're very, very different. But I wanted to mention that as well, and so I am sharing this one first this week. Well guys, thank you so much for being here and watching today's video. I really appreciate every single one of you. And if you haven't, I'd love to have you join our family, and you can do so by subscribing down below. But until Wednesday, you guys have a great rest of your Monday and Tuesday. Bye.